The movie opens with a teenage girl named Alice, a student at a strict Catholic high school where religious rules control almost every aspect of life. The environment is extremely conservative, and even the smallest topics related to relationships are treated as serious moral issues. Alice is shy, curious, and innocent by nature. She follows the rules, but deep down, she has questions about things she doesn't fully understand. One day, during a sex education class, Father Murphy stands in front of the students and begins lecturing them about purity. He explains that any sexual activity before marriage is a sin and that God becomes angry when people disobey his rules. The classroom atmosphere is tense and uncomfortable. Then, one brave student asks an unexpected question about whether self-pleasure is wrong. Father Murphy responds with another question, asking if such an act can create life. When the student says no, he firmly declares that any attempt to seek pleasure outside of marriage is sinful, and God will never forgive such actions. According to him, those who commit such acts will face punishment. The class ends with fear planted firmly in the students' minds. After class, Alice's best friend, Nora, approaches her and complains about how strict and outdated the school rules are. She feels suffocated by the constant moral policing. During their conversation, the topic of self-pleasure comes up again. Nora casually points out that Alice repeatedly watches the romantic scene from Titanic and asks if that isn't also a kind of curiosity. Alice admits that she wants to understand intimacy better, even if she feels guilty about it. Her curiosity is growing, but so is her confusion. Later, Alice goes home and sits in front of her computer. She logs into an online chat room where she talks with friends. While chatting, she suddenly receives a private message from a stranger who claims to have seen her profile. He says he has sent her a picture of his wife and asks if she likes it. Curious but nervous, Alice opens the image and is shocked to see that it contains explicit content. She immediately closes it in panic. However, after a moment of hesitation, her curiosity gets the better of her, and she opens it again. The stranger continues messaging her and begins asking personal questions about her age and sexual experiences. Feeling embarrassed and unsure, Alice lies about her age, claiming she is older than she actually is. When the stranger asks for her photo, she sends a picture of her friend instead, trying to protect her identity. The conversation slowly becomes more explicit, filled with topics she barely understands. The stranger asks if she has ever touched herself before, pushing her further into unfamiliar territory. Alice is overwhelmed. She doesn't fully grasp what is happening, but she feels both guilty and strangely curious. The teachings from school echo in her mind, warning her that such thoughts are sinful. Yet at the same time, she cannot ignore the natural curiosity she feels. And this is where Alice's inner conflict truly begins, torn between religious fear and teenage curiosity. Overwhelmed by curiosity, Alice slowly begins to explore her feelings in private, hesitantly reaching under her skirt, trying to understand the sensation everyone keeps warning her about. Just as she is about to give in completely, she suddenly hears her mother calling her from downstairs. Startled and ashamed, she quickly pulls herself together, shuts down the computer, and rushes downstairs. The next day at school, Alice and Nora are having lunch when another girl approaches them and casually mentions that at a party the previous week, someone had given a hand job, and now the rumor has spread across the entire school. Nora immediately turns to Alice and asks if it's true. Confused and embarrassed, Alice insists that she doesn't even know what that means. The girl shrugs it off and walks away, but the boys sitting nearby begin laughing and whispering. Humiliated and upset, Alice leaves the cafeteria. Later, alone, she silently prays and asks God for forgiveness, still carrying guilt over the moment she touched herself. Soon, the entire school goes on a religious retreat trip. During the bus ride and arrival, Nora nudges Alice and points out how attractive Chris looks. Alice glances at him and feels an unfamiliar flutter inside her. She tries to suppress it, reminding herself of everything she has been taught, but she can't deny her feelings. Once they arrive at the retreat center, the students are assigned rooms. A girl named Nina informs Alice that according to the rules, everyone must surrender their watches and mobile phones. Alice hesitates. She lies and says she doesn't have a phone, secretly keeping it with her, though she hands over her watch to avoid suspicion. Later, the students gather in a hall where they are divided into small groups. To Alice's surprise and excitement, Chris is chosen as the leader of her group. She can barely hide her happiness. The teachers explain that God has brought them there for a reason, and that the experiences they have during this retreat will shape their moral future. Each student is handed a paper and asked to write down their deepest feelings and sins. That night, back in her room, Alice secretly takes out her phone. Feeling restless and confused, she switches it to vibrate and hides it beneath the blankets, letting herself drift into a world of private sensations, torn between pleasure and shame. However, her secret does not remain hidden for long. Nina eventually discovers that Alice kept her phone. Wanting to appear righteous, she reports it to the teacher. Alice is called out and reprimanded. The teacher tells her that he might forgive her, but God may not. As punishment, she is assigned cleaning duties, reinforcing the idea that she has committed a serious sin. Later, Chris approaches Alice and tells her that his girlfriend broke up with him because of the rumor spreading around school, the one involving her name. Alice is shocked. She insists she didn't even understand what the rumor meant and that she never intended to cause any harm. The weight of guilt grows heavier on her shoulders. Not long after, Alice notices Nina secretly being intimate with a boy, despite acting morally superior in front of everyone. The hypocrisy is impossible to ignore. Alice shares what she saw with her friend, realizing that the people who judge the loudest often hide their own secrets. Alice's confusion deepens. She begins to see cracks in the rigid moral world she has been raised in, a world full of fear, judgment, and contradictions. Alice tries to tell her friend what she saw about Nina being intimate with a boy, but no one believes her. It only seems like she is trying to take revenge. Feeling isolated and misunderstood, Alice quietly continues her cleaning punishment. While she is working alone, something shocking happens. Father Murphy enters the room and sits at a computer, unaware that Alice is nearby. Hiding behind a corner, she accidentally witnesses him watching adult content and touching himself, the very act he had declared sinful and unforgivable. Alice feels her world collapse in that moment. The man who preached fear, guilt, and divine punishment is secretly doing the same things he warned them about. Tears fill her eyes as she quietly walks away, overwhelmed by anger and betrayal. Later, Chris approaches her, and they sit together. The emotional tension between them builds. Unable to control her feelings any longer, Alice suddenly kisses him. Chris, confused and nervous, pulls away and leaves abruptly. The rejection stings, but it also forces Alice to confront her emotions honestly. Still shaken, she steps outside to clear her head. There, she meets another girl from the retreat who openly admits that she constantly feels afraid of God's punishment whenever she tries to explore her own feelings. But eventually, she stopped believing that natural desires are sinful. Hearing this gives Alice a sense of relief. For the first time, someone validates what she has been feeling. She realizes that curiosity and desire do not automatically make her a bad person. Determined to face the hypocrisy directly, Alice confronts Father Murphy. She tells him that she knows the truth, that she saw him watching adult content and touching himself. His face turns pale. In that moment, Alice understands that the system itself is flawed. The adults use fear to control the students, even though they struggle with the same human desires. When Alice returns home, something inside her has changed. She sits down on the couch, turns on the television, and allows herself to think without fear. She realizes that for so long, she has been living in constant anxiety, terrified that God would punish her for feelings she never chose to have. She begins to explore her body again, not out of shame, but out of self-understanding. The guilt that once consumed her slowly fades. For the first time, she chooses curiosity over fear. And that is where the film leaves us, with Alice no longer trapped by blind guilt, but beginning to understand herself on her own terms.